Another morning breaks over the jungles of Gir. The origins of this land are lost in the midst of time. It is difficult to pinpoint when and how this forest got its name, but it is famed around the world for its wild splendor and its inhabitants. There is tension in the air today. The Lord of the Jungle is hungry. A cloud of fear hangs over the prey. The king of the beasts is on the prowl. But even as it stalks its quarry, death stalks the lion. A powerfully built, muscular cat, the male lion displays a regal and imposing nonchalance. It regularly exceeds 400 pounds in the wild and measures up to 10 feet in length from the tip of the tail to the nose. Females, only slightly smaller, range from 275 to 400 pounds and measure up to 9 feet in length. Like other members of the Felidae, the lion has a lithe, compact, and deep-chested body with a rounded head and prominent whiskers. It is possible to enter a forest that has tigers and leopards, but not have a single sighting, because tigers and leopards are known to be reticent, mysterious, and secretive. But the lion is different. When one enters the lion territory, he comes out in the open, curiously looking back at you. The presence of this beast is hypnotic.
He is indeed the king of the wilds, and every time you see him, it's a new experience which one gets to observe, because he is so regal, he is so shall I say, commanding in his presence, and he's so visible, unlike other large cats, that one cannot but have admiration for this superb animal.
The lion is unusual amongst the cat species because it is the only one that lives in organized social groups called prides. The lion is clearly the most social of all cats. Life in the pride is, for the most part, a tactile experience with a great deal of social grooming, open display of affection, and playing. The pride is mainly composed of a group of often related lionesses, their offspring, and 1 to 6 nomadic males who have fought their way to dominance. The territory of the pride is fixed, but its size and its area of dominance depends on the availability of prey. The legacy of the lion, the king of beasts, began in some of the earliest drawings made by humans over 15,000 years ago. Of all the great cats, the lion has always held a supreme place in man's esteem and imagination. In ancient Indian texts, like the Rig Veda, the lion has been credited with attributes of nobility, courage, loyalty, combative skills, and sexual prowess. The reverence that this animal commands in India is visible from its depiction on temple walls, forts and palaces. In popular pantheon, it is the mount of goddess Durga, a symbol of Shakti or power. The spread of Buddhism through Emperor Ashoka carried the lion insignia far and wide.
Right from the Rigvedic times, you find that the lion is mentioned there. It is described in the earliest of the Vedas. And you see, with the spread of Hindu religion, the lion went to areas where probably it never existed. Why probably? Certainly it never existed in historical times. For instance, south of the Narmada River. And yet, right up to the southern tip of India, we find lions being represented in sculpture, in Sangam literature. We find even the island of Sri Lanka is the island of lions. Singapore is the city state of lions. Now, of course, that kind of name is a survival of the spread of Buddhist religion into the Far Eastern areas.
As India became independent, it found in the lion a perfect emblem to portray courage and fearlessness. Flags, coins, currency, lions seem to be thriving everywhere, except where they should be, in the jungles of India. The lion once roamed large parts of the globe, in Israel, Iran, Saudi Arabia. Within India, it was once found all across the Great Indian Plains, at almost all those places where tiger survives today. Once the lion coexisted with it. But while the stealthy nocturnal tiger has survived, the lion has been wiped out. The very qualities that make the lion an admired creature are the ones that prompted its rapid demise.
Male lions tend to roar once every 24 hours for various territorial reasons. They tend to live in prides. They can be seen out in the open much more often than tigers. They live in more open country. And so the same factors which had made it possibly so prominent that people identified with it or they saw it as symbolic of something which they held important, these same factors became probably a source of vulnerability, particularly with the coming of modern firearms and with the growth, very importantly, of British power in the early 19th century.
The lion has now been wiped out everywhere, except here in Saurashtra. An isolated population of the last surviving 350 Asiatic lions now live at Gir National Park. Spread over 1,400 square kilometers, Gir is an oasis surrounded by vast dry land. But inside Gir, there is a rich deciduous forest with scattered patches of thick evergreen trees. Its open fields give the lions place to roam and hunt, and also to hide and camouflage in its golden foliage. Clear rivulets feed more than 400 different varieties of flowering plants and over 100 tree species. Wild boar, cheetal, nilgai, samba and other mammals form a large prey base that serve the master at the top of the food chain. Just as the king was the chief among men, the lion is the chief among animals. Despite their obvious appeal, lions in India were brutally hunted to near extinction by successive generations of Indian rulers, the sultans, the Mughals, and finally the British.
Hunting for sport. There was killing for bounties. There were rewards given out because it was part of the civilizing mission of the Raj to kill off large carnivores. And finally, of course, the spread of cultivation. Much of lion country is dry lowland, which is a very good area if you are able to put it under the plow. So it's a combination of all of these that brought it to the edge of extinction by the 1890s.
Some of the most frenzied killing was done by the Imperial British officers who continued to press their claim over their share of royal shikar of the large cat.
just over 150 years ago, 1857-58, Colonel Ackland Smith, who served in the British forces which crushed the rebellion of 1857, he shot about 300 lions. 55 of those lions were shot within 1 day's horse ride of Delhi. In other words, from where we are sitting and talking here, standing here, he could go out on horseback, shoot these lions and get back and spend the night in his tent in Delhi.
Though no scientific and proven data was collected at that time, it was widely reported that at the beginning of the 20th century, just a handful of lions remained in the wild. This triggered the first ever initiative to save the lion. Junaghar's sixth Nawab did what no government or ruler had done, that is to give protection to a large carnivore. Mahabad Khanji II ordered strict protection of the lions in his domain. He passed a royal decree that prohibited anybody to hunt the lions without the explicit permission of the Nawab.
Mahabad Khanji II, who in his rule in 1875 gave orders that the lion should be protected because there was a feeling that the lions were very few in number and it was a question of their survival. This was absolutely an egalitarian move, and he was followed by Rasul Khanji, who succeeded him. And Rasul Khanji protected the lions by continuing the earlier tradition and prohibiting the hunting of all lions.
The Junagadh state then formulated strict rules regarding shikar. These were codified by the British imperial government. This curbed lion hunting to a large extent. The next 3 generations of Junagadh Nawabs stuck to the vision of their ancestor and continued to extend protection to the Gir habitat. Finally, in 1906, Gir was made a sanctuary by Nawab Rasul Khanji.
The real turning point is in 1900, when supported by Lord Curzon, the Nawab of Junagadh, began to assert some sort of control. Remember, they were not attempting to protect all lions, simply to control the number that was shot. So probably the fact that it was such an important trophy animal, that it had symbolic significance, that it was not found anywhere else, helped it to become important to the Nawab of Junagadh and some of the neighboring principalities, Bhavnagar and to a lesser extent the Gaikwads of Baroda.
If it was not for the pioneering efforts of Gujarat's Nawabs, the world would have lost the Asiatic lion. A cat which looks like its African cousin, but is in fact a separate subspecies. Separated from their African counterpart about 100,000 years ago, the Asian lion has a lot of distinct features.
There are certain morphological or visual differences between the African and the Asian lion. Of course, the most visible difference is that the mane of the Asiatic or Indian lion is black. It is pretty long, but it is not so luxuriant between the ears, and the ears of the Asian lions are very visible, whereas those of the African lions, as a rule, are not visible. Similarly, the abdominal fold, which is very noticeable in Indian lions, is not noticeable or does not exist in most of the cases of the African lion. Also, there is a difference in the skull's formation, which has been observed only in the skulls of Asian lions, but not of those of the African lions. But these are visual differences, and the latest researches show that the founding fathers of the Asian lion population were probably certainly from Africa.
The most important behavioral difference is that Asian lions live in smaller prides. But there are also a lot of similarities between the African and Asian lions. The lionesses do most of the hunting, while the males defend the pride's territory. Young lionesses may stay with the mother's pride or join other prides. The lion remains solitary. Young male lions are usually expelled from the pride after they are around 3 years old. Thanks to the protection of Gir, the lion population began to grow. Today, there are about 350 lions in and around Gir National Park. Here is a rare visual display of lions frolicking in the waters of Gir. Lions are known to avoid all contact with water, but in the dry heat of summer, this pride is obviously breaking all known conventions. A century-long effort of protection should have been able to sort out issues and create a safe home for the lion. But at Gir, some old and festering dilemmas remain. It is the last home of the Asiatic lion, but the lion shares his refuge with almost 150,000 livestock, consisting of buffaloes, cows, sheep and camel. India has one of the world's largest population of livestock, and even a sanctuary reserved for the lion is not free from their presence. Gujarat is a dry state with little vegetation. In search of fodder, villagers living around the sanctuary drive their herds inside Gir. The livestock movement disturbs the lion and depletes the food base of the herbivores. As if this was not enough, there are villages inside the sanctuary that are inhabited by traditional communities like the Maldaris. Today, there are more than 100,000 Maldaris who live deep inside Gir in their traditional villages called nests. They keep large numbers of cattle, plough the land, and take all that they need from the forest: firewood, herbs, honey. Though there are no written records, the Maldaris claim to be the original inhabitants of this area. They say that they even received a royal consent from the Junagadh Nawabs to live inside the sanctuary. Though there have been many attempts to relocate them, the Maldaris have resisted these moves.
नहीं सिंह ने मालधारी तो जंगल ની શોભા છે ને ફોરેસ્ટરો અમારા સાહેબ હોય એ આવે ને જાય ને અમે એકબીજા મળીએ ને રહીએ આનંદથી.
The Maldaris claim they share a symbiotic relationship with the lion and that they should be allowed to stay inside the park. They say that in times of shortage and drought, the lion survives by hunting their livestock, and that as long as the government provides them with compensation for the dead cattle, they are happy to share the space with the carnivores.
A small population, limited population of Maldaris would not do much of harm in Gir, and it may be okay. But when the population starts growing, then one has to be concerned about. Sometimes Maldari animals, as I told you, get killed by lion, and we provide compensation. And Maldaris know about how to live with lion. They are able to protect their cattle, most of the cattle, from lion. So it's a success story working in that direction. We don't see a very serious conflict with Maldaris. But then since they are living there, there are day-to-day issues, and there are day-to-day concerns which we keep on addressing.
But according to conservationists, the presence of Maldaris intensifies the man-lion conflict. How can cattle herders be supportive of the carnivores? There have been frequent cases of lion poisoning in recent years, and many point a finger at the Maldaris.
There is a kind of a tolerance of some sort, but it is tenuous. the people do realize that this is the abode and has always been the abode of the lion and that they have come in. But when the lion kills their livestock, then retribution does come about. They don't want such losses to happen, and then they retaliate by poisoning them or killing them, mainly through poison.
The Maldari livestock continue to grow in number. Many conservationists claim that their animals feed on fodder and grass that leads to reduced food for herbivores. This in turn means reduced food for the lion. There are many conflicting bits of research and views on the issue.
It shows a very complex relationship of Maldaris to two key prey animals, the cheetal and the samba. Evidently, numbers of cheetal are higher, repeat, higher where there are Maldaris, because Maldaris create artificial watering points for cheetal. And cheetal cannot tolerate aridity beyond a certain number. For the samba, it's the reverse effect. The lopping by the Maldaris deprives the samba of the kind of thick, dense cover that they prefer.
While the debate goes on, the fact is that this is one of the driest parts of the Indian subcontinent. The heat is intense and the forest cover is sparse. Any depletion of the grass is a loss to the forest. The situation becomes worse when the monsoon fails and there is a drought. Erratic rains, shrinking water holes, drying riverbeds, all have a devastating impact on the forest and its inhabitants. As is true for all ecosystems, the life of one is tied to the life of all. And as one who sits at the top of the food chain, the lion faces the brunt of the situation. Its hunts become more and more difficult. As hot winds blow across the land, the whole forest crackles into spreading flames of fire. Many claim that negligence by tourists and pilgrims has much to do with the annual forest fires. But this has not led to a decrease in human presence in Gir. In fact, the pilgrim traffic to the three temples has only been spiraling. As if the pressure from state highways and roads was not enough, there is also a railway line that cuts across Gir. The railways claim that as a special concession to the lions, they run at reduced speeds inside the forest. Despite protests from conservationists, there is no plan to abandon or relocate this route. Though increased tourist traffic has contributed greatly to lion conservation by boosting earnings and stimulating interest in this magnificent animal, it has also impinged on the lion's space. The lion has in the past been subjected to many and varied whims. At one time, the Gir lions were exhibited to the tourists by tying baits and organizing lion shows.
Till the 1980s, there was in Gir a very unique institution called the Lion Show, where lions would be fed baits of domestic buffalo calves, and there would be huge concentrations, 15-20 lions waiting, and tourists would come and alight from the station wagons and watch the lions. And I have seen lioness around 10-12 feet from me as a 10-year-old boy, and I've never forgotten it. But it's not such a good idea for the lions, because it created artificial agglomerations. In some cases, it may have got them very used to very close human contact, and it was put an end to by Mrs. Indira Gandhi in the 1980s when she was Prime Minister.
It is often forgotten that though the lions have increased over the years, their numbers are deceptive and hide the fragility of this species. All the lions come from just a handful of healthy individuals. With such a shallow gene pool, the Gir lions are like identical photocopies with hardly any inborn diversity. They are also extremely susceptible to disease.
In 1993, 1,000 lions died in Serengeti as a result of a canine distemper. Now, if that sort of thing should happen here in the Gir, then how can such a small population sustain such a huge loss? So it is very essential that a separate and a distant lion population is created by transplanting maybe half a dozen animals and then continuing to exchange animals across the line.
All the Asiatic lions that the world has are crammed together in one small sanctuary. Scientists are worried that a single setback or infection could finish them forever. There is a strong case for establishing a second home for the lion and translocating them to another suitable habitat that has enough prey base and protection. Kuno, a sanctuary in Madhya Pradesh, was prepared just for this purpose. But the state government of Gujarat is not convinced that translocation is necessary. This may have more to do with the fact that any alternative sanctuary will mean that Gujarat will lose its title of being the only place in the world to have the Asiatic lion. Park officials claim that all past attempts to translocate lions have been a failure. In 1956, a few lions were shifted to Chandruprabha Sanctuary in Uttar Pradesh, but all the lions soon disappeared. While various government departments are trying to grapple with the issue, the lions have taken the matter in their own paws. Nearly 56 lions have abandoned crowded Gir and created small separate domains outside the park.
They've strayed as far away as Porbandar along the coast. They've strayed further south to Diu, and opposite Diu. Diu is an island, and there are pictures of a lioness walking along the Diu beach. So they've strayed out. There was a time some years ago when they used to be captured and brought back. But if they are brought back, they don't belong there, because they've been born and brought up somewhere else. And there is no vacant niches or empty spaces, as it were, territories in the Gir. So they go back again where they were. So the forest department has now stopped capturing and bringing them back again.
There are many who lay claim to the Asiatic lion, quite forgetting that they belong to no one except themselves. They should be conserved for their own sake. Man has long celebrated the glory of this magnificent animal, but is it doing enough to prevent its extinction?